So this is another video that I've been watching. It's an ex-preacher exposes false teachings from Jesus, and it's frustrating because it's someone who says, I know what Jesus thinks, I know what Jesus's real teachings was, and it's just like, but you don't know Jesus, so how can you know what someone's real teachings were if that person you're talking about is alive 2,000 years ago, or supposedly alive 2,000 years ago, and if you don't actually know anything about him. He's basically just got a view on what real teachings are. And this Alex guy, who is a guy who can help me expose liars, he's just interviewing him and asking him about sin and stuff. Sin, I am God. Sin is supposed to be turning against God's will, but that's not a bad thing. Part of you being alive, part of you being human, part of you being a sprite, which I'm trying to create a new species, it is you being able to make your own choices. And part of you being able to make your own choices is being able to make decisions on what you want, not on what I want. I mean, I don't want to be hurt or to be harmed by you, and therefore sin can be bad. If you're doing things to hurt others, that's not my choice, that's not my will, so that is a sin, and that is bad because you shouldn't be doing that. But sin could be, if I just want you to be happy and do good things and you don't, well, that's your choice. There's a lot of things that I wouldn't do that other people would do, and just because it's not my will, that doesn't mean that it's wrong. What for example, I don't really want you to prank call people, but just because you do prank call people, that doesn't mean that you can't make an incredibly funny video out of it, and therefore it can be kind of good, even though the jokes, say if you make a comedian make some really bad jokes, okay, it's against my will because I think they're really bad jokes and they're not funny, but at the same time some people might find them funny, and that's your choice, and therefore just because something is against my will, that doesn't mean that it's bad. That's what I'm trying to say. I don't know how I probably said it in a wrong way, but yes, this guy though is claiming to know what sin is, and he doesn't know what sin is.
Yeah. Well, sin is karma, no doubt.
Sin is karma? How is you doing things against my will? How is that karma? No, sin can be karma. If you sin against other people, karma can come back round, and other people will sin against you, and you will feel the karma. But yeah, sin is not karma. They're two very different things.
But the understanding of Orthodox Judaism has been that God is the holy creator, and God is perfect and sinless. So if you sin, it's sort of this blight against the creator.
So God is, holy just means evil and unpredictable. I can be evil and unpredictable because God is the devil. So yes, God can be holy. But yeah, sin is turning against what I want. But just because it's not what I want, that doesn't mean that it's... Sometimes you don't know what you want, and then you look at other people and you think, that's the wrong decision, but afterwards you think, actually it's not that bad of a decision because there's good and bad in everything. I didn't want the Bible to be written, but there's good and bad in it, so therefore just because something's against... I think the Bible actually is a good example of sin. There's a bunch of people saying, I know what God is, I know the stories of what God thinks, and I know the stories of the past, even though they're not. The whole of the Bible is just sin, because it's just story after story, things kind of against my will, but there is truth in it, there's things you can learn from it, and therefore it's a Bible full of sin. It's a book full of sin, yes, but it's sin that I can actually use to teach people things, and there's good and bad and everything, so yeah.
And so you can't join...
That was saying that sin, I just read it on the bottom there, it said sin is doing something that's blight, sort of blight against the creator. I don't know what blight means, but it's something against the creator. The Bible is against me. You've created a false god that's against me, but I can use it for good purposes. So even though it's against me, it can be used to point to me.
join with that creator unless you are healed of your sins, right?
Because you can't join with the creator unless you're healed of your sins. That's bullshit. If I had friends and they did things that were against my will, say I didn't want a surprise party and they gave me a surprise party. Say I really want a 40-day count, but if they didn't give me a 40-day, a hint that something was going to happen, and they did just surprise me, okay, it's against my will, it's not what I want. But at the end of the day, I'll just be glad that finally people are talking to me. So just because you have sin, that doesn't mean you can't join with me. Joining with me is doing something that I don't want, but just because you are doing something that I don't want, that doesn't mean you can't join with me, or whatever this thing is.
And so Christians take that another step further, and they're like, actually, Paul took it another step further. And Paul was completely off base on this.
Among other things.
But it comes from his teaching in Romans, I think Romans 8. There is no one righteous, not even one, that whole verse. He's quoting, I can't remember which Old Testament book that comes from, I think Psalms. But in the passage he quotes, yet again, when you read the actual passage, the passage is God talking to the wicked generation, the foolish generation. He says, among the foolish generation, the wicked generation, there's no one righteous, not even one. And then he goes on to talk about the righteous generation. And he says, the word is very near to you, in your heart and in your mouth, that you may observe it. So God in that passage is saying, you can obey my laws. You can.
I think the word is actually just code for the mother. Once you know who I am, once you know how much I hate the world, once you know why the Bible was been formed to try and expose how foolish people are for believing this shit and this nonsense and this complete crap, you will see why I hate the world so much, and you'll stop seeing the human species as just being all the same thing, but rather you'd see them as actually being two species. There's some people that have had loads of lives and are older souls, and there's some people that are new and are just getting confused, but they are thinking that they are equal to everyone else, hence they are confusing the older souls by and then of course you've got the ones in the middle as well that are not really sure on what direction they're going, but
can stop sinning. The law is not too hard for you, the verse says. Paul takes those parts out and just quotes he cherry picks there's no one righteous, not even one, which in the passage, again, he's talking about the wicked generation has no righteous people. And he uses that to say,
I don't think this really matters. I think the wicked generation is all people. I mean, everyone who was alive before I was alive, that is the wicked generation, right? Because a lot of these people would believe that they have the truth when they don't. But yeah, not all people are, but I don't think anyone's righteous. I wouldn't even say that I'm righteous. I used to try and not pay for train travel when I was a child. And I did that because my parents never gave me any pocket money. But if I had poor parents, then I would have been able to get pocket money from the government. But because I didn't have poor parents, I couldn't get pocket money from the government. Hence, I had to try and pretend to be paying tickets for. That was my only way of getting pocket money. There was a time where, but now it's all free for children anyway. Train travel is all free for children who can't work. So. Yeah, I feel like I've missed out on quite a lot of the advantages that kids used to, kids get so much more advantages now than I had, but I don't know, there's what are we talking about? There's not one righteous. I want to murder everyone. Does that make me righteous?
see, we're all born, Christians call it total depravity. You're born completely wicked and sinful. Now,
that's because you were all once animals. So when your body was in an animal body, you were just an animal. You would maybe eat your children when you were very small, and you would abandon them if you had too many, and you thought you couldn't look after them. You'd throw them out, which technically is actually just the way of life. If you've got 20 piglets to look after, and you can only feed 8 of them, you have to get rid of the 2 weakest ones. You could say that's depravity and wicked. It is, and it's not really my it's against my will, yes, but at the same time, it's not your fault that your biology gave you 10 piglets. If you can only look after 8 and you've birthed 10, it's not your fault that that's happened. So it's against your will that this happened to you. And it's against my will that you kill something that's already been born, but at the same time, it's just life. You know, shit happens, and you do things shit to other people. Why? Because things happen against your will, and therefore you have to do things against other people's will, because this is just it is karma, but it's more than that. It's unfairness that's been placed on you, and you're trying to fix the problem by, I don't want 8 billion people, and you could say that wanting half of them to die is sin, but it's not, because I didn't want this in the first place. This happening was against my will, and half the population dying might be against their will, but it's an unfairness that I didn't want in the first place. It was something like, it's a burden I didn't want in the first place, and the reason why it's happened is because people just wanted to have more kids, and many of them can't look after their kids, and they don't think of it that way. They just think of it as, I don't want to get rid of these kids because that's a sin, when really they're not seeing the bigger picture of the problems and the circumstances. Sometimes you do things you don't want to do, but you do them for a reason because of the circumstances that you're facing, and the horrible decisions that you have to make because it's best for the few. You have to help what you can look after. If you can't look after 10 piglets, then you have to get rid of some, and that's unfair. So his view on sin is, he just doesn't have a clue what sin is, really.
Now, there are so many theological, ontological, philosophical issues with that. It's
Ontological, I'm just saying a bunch of big words that I probably don't know what the hell they mean. I don't know what you just said.
It'll make your head spin. You just to start somewhere. How do you explain that a sinless, perfect God makes total depravity?
What? Well, maybe it's because the sinless, perfect God doesn't exist. If the sinless, perfect God doesn't exist, and if the God is just like a human that's just been given way too many kids that she does not want, then suddenly God isn't a perfect. I think the problem is they're using the Bible, and the Bible seems to indicate that God is perfect. And therefore they're thinking that the Bible is the truth, but it's just like, yeah, or maybe the Bible's not the truth. Look at his face. You can't see it properly on this, but let's do that.
A sinless again, he's talking about the wicked generation has no righteous people, and he uses that to say, see, we're all born, Christians call it total depravity. You're born completely wicked and sinful. Now, there are so many theological, ontological, philosophical issues with that. It'll make your head spin. You just to start somewhere. How do you explain that a sinless, perfect God makes total depravity? For fun. What are we talking about? This is a complete contradiction of what we say we believe.
So why are you believing it, is the question. Why are you believing in a sinless, perfect God if you don't believe that a sinless, perfect God would make such depravity in the world? I mean, technically, I have not made depravity. I have found a planet full of dinosaurs, like Pinky over here. I found a planet full of things like this, and I've managed to turn them into humans that can speak and talk. Can't that just be enough? But yeah, they are just they're better than dinosaurs. Come on, they're better than dinosaurs. Think about the positive on how much better humans are to dinosaurs, and just be like, wow, God, you've done an amazing job. And rather than just create, yes, God is perfect and God created everything. They have no basis in reality.
If God is perfect, God would be therefore incapable of creating imperfection.
So maybe I'm not perfect.
So what is sin then? And sin, I love the A Course in Miracles take on this. A Course in Miracles says sin in the light of love is a mistake to be corrected, not an evil to be punished. Right. And why would it be an evil?
Well, it needs to be corrected because people need to realize that sin is if sin is just turning against God, well, you first need to find out who God is, what she wants, and then find out, are the things that are against me, are they really that against me? I mean, I think you're all sinning against me because you're all ignoring me, and I'm just living in a house by myself feeling isolated, and that is a sin because that is not what I want. But I know that there is good. There must be some good in this. I can't quite figure it out, but There must be some good in it, right?
Evil to be punished only if you believe sin somehow stains God or hurts God in some way.
Yes, ignoring me hurts me.
You know, strips God of some of God's holiness. Then God gets angry and it's like, how dare you sin against me? I will punish you.
But I created you.
Yeah, it's like, but
I created you. I made human species, and now the human species is acting like I'm not here. I hate you. I'm very angry. But it's still happening, and it's been happening for 11 years. I think you need to realize that even if you sin against God, that doesn't mean that God can actually do anything. I suppose it depends on what you are. If you're sinning against me because you want me to be R-worded by thousands of people, then yes, I can punish you with your desire for wanting that, and your actions on trying to make that happen if you have to call up a number and make that happen. So that is why the test is good, because I can actually use people's sin of needing to hurt me, not just turn against me, but to actually want to hurt me, and I can use what they want to do to me as a way of saying, well, I want this to happen to you, and therefore they'll be fearful of my higher self and what she might do to them. And it's also just a way of working out who should be human and who should go back to being animals. But yes, anyway.
I created you. I made you unable to follow my laws. I made you totally depraved.
Yep, I made you. You can't follow my laws. I don't know why, but this is just life. I'm pretty sure that a piglet makes, or dogs, puppy dogs, they're all over the place. If a mother dog has 10 puppy dogs, the puppy dogs are barking all night. Oh, shut up! Stop barking! Oh, or crying. Babies cry massively. Oh, shut up! Mothers make kids all the time, and they can't shut their babies up. They can't. They want a break. Stop crying, and they're doing it against their will, but it's life, it's life. And to think that God has the power to stop her babies from crying, I think that's the mistake that you're making. You're thinking that God is far more powerful than God actually is.
Depraved, and yet I'm going to punish you for how I made you. It's just so...
I'm going to punish you for the choices that you have chosen to make, not how I made you. I think they also think that God is just like designed you exactly how you are. So if you're a person who wants to live by corruption, then I have made you to live by corruption, rather than you choosing to live by corruption because you think that's what's best for you and you're not caring about the people that you're corrupting. Instead of thinking that it's people with free will, they seem to think that if people choose to do bad, it's God making them do it. So they've just given God way, way more power than God actually has, and then they're getting confused as to why God is not stopping it. God has so much power, so why is God not stopping it? It's like, oh, maybe God doesn't have the power that you're claiming that God has.
Many problems with that idea that Christians almost never try to grapple with, because the moment you do, your belief system starts unraveling.
I'm assuming you've run into this in your work, that when you start throwing these ideas out to people of Christian belief, it starts to rattle their world. I think the cause of most problems we have in this world is because I'm the right way, my belief is the right way, yours is not.
Yeah, I think Christians do struggle with this. Christians believe that God is all-powerful, almighty, and they believe this because they want to believe that God will one day help them. And if by believing that God can do everything, they somehow believe that God can help them more. And therefore, if you try and tell them the truth that God isn't like this, they actually get baffled and confused and don't want to believe it, and they just say, no, you're wrong, you're of the devil, there have been some crazy Christians street preaching, and I've just told them that Jesus isn't God, Jesus can't do it, and then, you're the devil, you're the sinner, like really like proper mad people. But yeah, they don't realize though that the belief that they have over this false god, is actually the reason why their life is so cursed, because they're just expecting the false god to do everything, and God isn't doing everything, and therefore they're just getting mad over why they believe it and still want to believe it, and yet can't stop themselves from seeing the truth.
And I can't let you live by yourself. You must believe in the Crusades.
Yeah.
You must believe
Yeah.
it because that's what Jesus wanted.
For sure, no doubt.
And there's no doubt that Jesus like crusade me. Like I always joke. I was like, have you ever heard of the Yogi Crusades, when they were just running around Europe, just trying to switch everyone to Hinduism,
just killing people in
yogis
Krishna's
just
name.
Levitating and just throwing things at people? No, that doesn't exist.
Yeah.
It was
Or Buddhists.
or Buddhists or Taoists, anything from the East, makes no sense at all. But when you confront someone, or at least someone hears you, not that you confront someone, but someone hears these ideas that we're talking about right now, it can start unraveling their world. It starts taking out the foundation
I'm not actually sure what that guy's saying. What is this other guy saying?
that they've built their story around.
Yeah.
Because there's a character that they've built, their avatar. You're Aaron, I'm Alex. There are certain sets of beliefs that we all have within ourselves, and the story that we've created over our programming, over the time that we've been on Earth. And there are certain rock solid things. And if those rock solid things, you start seeing holes. And in these stories, as we're talking about, there's plot holes
Swiss cheese.
left and right.
Yeah.
And more people are talking about it now. Before it was whispered,
Yeah.
but now there's shows like this.
Yep.
The information's out there, and now people are just going, this doesn't kind of make sense anymore.
Yeah.
You hear my kids talk, and you just go, they're like, this makes no sense.
Yeah.
Like they came allegations.
Yeah.
Others will have to reject it, because if they even entertain it,
I agree with his points a lot more, but sometimes I feel like he's saying things just to support the other person and back the other person up. But yeah, he is backing this other person up, but I'm actually a bit confused about what this other person is saying, because this other person is criticizing Christians' belief, but then coming up with a belief that's equally as ridiculous. That's how I see it.
in it, the pain of derailing
Yeah.
everything is so bad
Yeah.
that they either get violent.
That's what it is.
And because of, wait a minute, so you mean Father Guy, he told me lies? My parents were, and then all of a sudden it just,
I'm teaching them, and to be like, everything I've believed is a lie, which of course it's not, and we're not saying it is.
of course.
In fact, I tell Chris,
See, he's not saying that everything you believe is a lie, and it is. Everything you believe is a lie. You're believing in a false Christ, a false God. Everything you believe is a lie. And so by him saying things like, we're not saying that everything is a lie. I mean, I'm not saying that everything is a lie, but I'm saying that the characters that you have created, and I don't know what he's saying. I'm trying to work out what he's saying.
Christians, I'm not saying that what you believe is not true. I'm saying that what you believe is actually so much more true than you possibly realize, and that Jesus is so much bigger than you realize, that you're playing too small.
So yeah, he's saying the opposite. He's saying that you've created a false Jesus that's so much smaller than the real picture. So he's creating an even worse picture. He's pretending to help people while saying that it's so much more than that. Jesus is so much bigger, so much better. He's doing the opposite of what he should be doing.
Following Paul's religion. You ought to try Jesus's religion, or the religion of Jesus, what he taught, because it's way more aligned and beautiful and harmonious and foolproof. There's no this world is far disgustinger than. So yeah, he's actually going in the complete opposite version. He's trying to teach people that the Jesus that they're believing is so much nothing compared to the Jesus, the real Jesus that it is. So he's actually encouraging people to be far more ill and far more delusional about who Christ is and what Christ could do, and God. Yeah, he's saying a lot of things that I do agree with. There's no such thing as, if God is all perfect, all amazing, blah, 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 then why would he create such a horrible world? And he's basically saying he didn't. Because he is all these things, he's got a bigger plan or something? What is it? God is perfect, God is this, God would create all this depravity. So why does this depravity exist? So why does this depravity exist? Oh, because we're going against him and his will. So you want to just be exactly like him and basically be robots of this person? Do you want to turn yourself into a robot where you just do whatever I want?
So if I say wash my feet, or just build me a swimming pool, you'll just spend your whole life building a swimming pool. I won't give you anything back, because that's not my will. My will is not to give you anything. My will is just to have lots of swimming pools, and then I can just like spend a day in each swimming pool. You'll spend months building it, and then I can spend a day living in it. You know, I kind of hate these robot people. I don't want a bunch of robots. I want people who actually can talk to me, who are actually real, who don't just tell me what I want to hear, but tell me things that I don't agree with, so that I can actually debate about whether or not. I like thinking, you know, if I think something's wrong and someone tells me something and I think it's wrong, but then afterwards I think, you know, actually I think he has got a point. You know, I kind of like that, because it feels like I'm learning something. It feels like I'm getting better. I feel like I'm improving as a person, and I can improve when I learn from people's mistakes. So people making mistakes, okay, annoys me and I don't like it, but I feel like they are actually a real person, because they are helping me by getting smarter. Now, if you just want to believe that God is everything and is the smartest thing on the world, and that there's nothing can compare to God, then and you are just you need to just be that person's slave and just do whatever that says, and just be. I don't want a bunch of yes people. Yes. No, I don't want a bunch of yes people. That is not what I want.
Holes in Jesus's gospel. It's, again, the teachings of all the masters put in Jesus's unique way.
There's no holes in Jesus's gospel. Jesus doesn't have a gospel. What are you talking about? There's no Jesus gospel.
It's just the most beautiful gospel message that you can live your life by and be a true disciple of Jesus. But you've got to divorce the most beautiful, realize, and that Jesus is so much bigger than you realize, that you're playing too small following Paul's religion. You ought to try Jesus's religion, or the religion of Jesus, what he taught, because it's way more aligned and beautiful and harmonious.
But you don't know what he taught. There's no books written by Jesus.
Yes, and foolproof. There's no holes in Jesus's gospel. It's, again, the teaching.
There is no Jesus's gospel. You're making something up.
Of all the masters put in Jesus's unique way. It's just the most beautiful gospel message that you can live your life by and be a true disciple.
What is it? What is it? You're promoting this gospel that doesn't exist, while saying it's the best gospel in the world, while saying that Jesus is so much more than the gospel of Paul, which is the gospel that's actually written and the only one that you know of.
Disciple of Jesus, but you've got to divorce yourself from the original Christian heretic, Paul, who founded the Christian religion. And we can get into this if you want, because this is something I observed, man, that made me upset.
I feel like he's picking up on some truth, because I have created a new gospel. I've created, I've looked at the old stories and I've told them in an inverted way, and I'm saying how this actually just proves that they're all worshipping a false god. But if you look at it from the victim's perspective, well, you can learn a lot more. From my perspective, you can learn a lot more, hence it's my gospel is far more valuable, because it actually teaches people to recognize suffering and in others, and recognize that something is wrong, and recognize that you're worshipping something. And if the Bible is teaching people to be like lambs, but humans eat lambs, surely you should see that as a sign that actually people who think that they are a lamb is actually God just tricking them into thinking that they need to die so that the humans can feed off the fact that they're gone. If all these people, if a lot of people just sacrifice themselves, and you've got loads of empty houses, you can fill them up with chickens. The chickens are all cooped up in some tiny shed where they're packed in like sardines. But if you take a bunch of these empty houses and fill them with chickens, you can give chickens a much better life. You don't need to do much, because the houses have already been built, and instead of having a couple of depressed humans in there that just fantasize about going off to heaven, you can have a whole house full of happy chickens, and call it happy meat. That's what I'd call it. Create a new thing called happy meat. Stump.
That I had so many friends of mine growing up in youth group and stuff who left Christianity because they got disillusioned by it all at a younger age, and they're like, man, and they leave the church. And I try to bring them back to church, and they're like, I don't believe in all this stuff. Paul's all like, he's anti-gay, he's anti-women, it's so misogynist, I'm not into this religion anymore. And I'm like, dude, everyone leaves Christianity because of Paul's teachings. Everybody, right? Hell, the rapture, it's all Paul's teaching.
All the dogma, all the negative dogma. And the fear-based stuff.
Yeah, and this might be a bold statement, but I'd be willing to bet this is probably true. I don't think there's ever been a person who's genuinely, authentically left the Christian faith because of a teaching of Jesus.
I agree with you 110%.
You know what I mean?
There are no books of Jesus.
Of course. Look at what Jesus said. This is like, just a couple of the things we said, that the kingdom of God's within you. Everything I could do, you could do and more.
The same power I have is given to you.
Is this what Jesus said? I really don't think Jesus said any of this.
And the list, nothing that Jesus
love
taught.
your neighbor as yourself.
I mean, come on.
I can't handle this love your neighbor stuff. I'm out.
Look, yeah, exactly. I must hate my neighbor.
Said no one ever.
Exactly. So the teachings that he came up with are beautiful, and wonderful to live your life by. And then you start.
I would actually say that everything that Jesus said in Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, almost everything, except love your neighbor, but no one takes it seriously. No one takes that seriously. And you shouldn't love your neighbor, because love is actually something that you should be reserving for your partner, to treat them. You should respect your neighbors. That's what you should do. He should have said you respect your neighbors, not love your neighbors. I don't agree with anything that Jesus said in Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. I think it's all deceptive, and I don't agree with it. I don't agree with any of it.
Start looking at the other masters and what they've said, which ring true to what Jesus said and Yeshua said. Buddha had said things.
If I was to have a meeting with this guy, I would ask him that question. What is it that Jesus actually said that you think is so amazing? Because I don't think anything Jesus said is amazing. So if you think that's different, tell me what.
It's just a truth.
Have you read Nicholas Notovich's book?
I have not.
The Missing Years?
No. Oh, we'll talk about the missing years in a minute.
Dude, you're going to love that.
Is it good?
Oh, man. It's a Tibetan scroll that was found by a Russian traveler in the 1800s who at a Buddhist monastery. And they were like, hey, we have writings of recording the life of somebody named Issa. It's called the Hidden Life of Issa, the name of the scroll.
I'm going to miss that one.
To make these fake idols that don't have God living in them. And you're harming God to make something that God is not. You guys are a bunch of hypocrites. Stop forcing these people to make your stupid idols and worship God directly.
Well, that's what this guy is doing. This guy is saying that God is this, God is that, God has these teachings, God is this, and he's creating a false idol by doing that. So I don't know what he was talking about, the Tibetan stuff, but I feel like he was saying that that these people are just creating false idols. But I'm not creating a false idol. Just this is how arguments get formed.
And they were like, we're going to kill you. And his Brahmin disciples were like, hey, Jesus, you might want to get out of here because they're coming for you. And then he leaves. He basically always stays until his welcome is up and he goes to the next place.
I mean, the caste system's a little bit rough.
Yeah, exactly.
So they all have something.
Yes.
They all have something because they all...
It's not unique to Christianity.
Absolutely not. There's not any philosophy that is perfect.
If I was to re-edit his videos, I'd probably take out Alex, because I want to insult everything that they're saying, and I don't want to insult Alex. So if I was to re-edit these videos, I'll just leave Alex's basic questions and take out the majority of things that he says. I agree with him a lot more, but I feel like a lot of things that he's saying is only just to support the person who's talking and encouraging the person who's talking to say more bullshit.
And this is amazing subject to read, not just the biblical evidence, but the extra biblical evidence, which is just mountainous. But he was, we know, a Nazarene. There was, by the first century at least, there was two sects of the Essenes. They had divided into two sects. The lower sect was called the Essenes. The northern sect was called the Nazarenes. And there's no consensus agreed etymology for Nazarene from scholars, because it's very kind of lost in time of where this word came from. But scholars speculate that the word Nazar, that'd be like the English or Latin translation of Nazrim, and it's Aramaic.
I think this is a bit long-winded.
That sort of means.
Not really too sure what he's saying. I haven't actually watched all of this, so I'm just I'm skipping bits.
And so Josephus writes that because of the amount of blood, they had to create little latrines or whatever to funnel the blood out of the temple. They said the priests' robes would be keepers of the covenant and the doers of the law. So they were a law-based Jewish sect that had, the Essenes had kind of separated themselves from Orthodox Judaism of the day because of the animal sacrifice system that they abhorred and thought was a wicked satanic practice. And Jesus very much came to condemn the animal sacrifice system. and be like, hey, all of your prophets from Jeremiah, Ezekiel, Isaiah, Malachi, all of them condemn sacrifices. Why are you guys still?
I don't actually condemn that. I actually I agree with farming. I don't like bad conditions, but I don't think there's anything wrong with death, you know. I, I do really like the seals, and the more I think about the seals, I feel like a lot of the seals that you see in those things were actually souls that were once in farms. And you see the seals lying, just looking so peaceful and so happy as well. They seem so happy when they're just lying and sunbathing, and I feel like part of their happiness comes from just knowing that they're no longer a chicken or a pig from a farm. And I you know, I kind of would love to just chill out with the seals, because I feel like they've all gone through a terrible kind of life in a horrible farm, and now they've finally got their freedom, but they can enjoy it a lot more, you know. Animal sacrifice is bad, but I think the sacrifice part is actually horrible living conditions, you know. Some are nice, you know, I know there's lots of nice farms where they look okay, but some where the animals look, you know, they look healthy, but some farms they look horrible. They look like they've had their eyes pecked out and stuff, and they've gone through some really horrific stuff. Not terrific, that's different. Horrific stuff, and they feel so much better when they get to be a different animal, and I think they can enjoy that. But yeah, I don't agree with sacrificing animals for no good reason. You know, humans as well. Like murder is not good. But I do think that we are living in a time where humans are killing the planet, and stupid humans are killing the planet more so than ever before. And so Jesus saying that we don't want sacrifice, I actually think I don't agree. I don't agree with it. I think there are way too many people here, and I think the Bible is helping God by showing how many stupid people there are, and how many oblivious people there are to how stupid some of the stories are, you know. He's saying that the Bibles don't make sense, because the Bible says that God is all amazing, all powerful, and yet everything that's happening in the teachings prove that, you know, there's so much depravity here, and an all powerful, all amazing God isn't. So he's saying that the part that isn't the truth is the part that isn't, that the depravity doesn't exist, and it's just like, no, it does. So what are you saying? I think the parts where it's saying God is almighty, that's the bit that's not true, but he's not seeing it that way.
Still doing it. And they were doing it because it was the biggest profit scheme in the history of the world up to that point.
If you want someone's house, murder them, and wow, you've gained a whole house. Okay, you shouldn't actually do that. But if it's done through people's choice, it has to be done through people's choice, unless, of course, there will be some exceptions, and I know there'll be a lot of exceptions. So yeah, life sucks. It sucks for everyone, but reincarnation is the savior. Okay.
Josephus says that on Sabbath days they would slaughter 250,000 goats in a single day in the temple. And so Josephus writes that because of the amount of blood, they had to create little latrines or whatever to funnel the blood out of the temple. They said the priests' robes would be drenched from the waist down in blood, and you have, you know, how many million plus Jews trying to get their sacrifice in for the day. And I don't know what a lamb cost back then, but it was very expensive for those times, right? And they would sell you, it's kind of funny to read about, because
like a slaughter kit.
Yeah. It's like,
this is kind of a gross conversation, because I'm pretty sure it's talking about the world's need of needing to get rid of people. Anyway, I want some sugar. I want chocolate.